what I learned about pain, it's a massive ball of energy. And that energy can be used for good. And really what it's all about, if a customer or a person has pain, they're really trying to get out of that pain as quickly as possible. So they're extremely motivated. And they were motivated to take a journey with us to get to the other side and to try some completely new things, to basically put a new playbook in place about how we work together. So now I don't really shy away from negative events within customer relationships. I actually see them as a great opportunity. If you do the right thing and if you get in the foxhole with the customer, the relationship could actually be better when it concludes than before the whole crisis began.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Sales Enablement Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Paul. That was Jamal Reimer. Jamal is the author of a book titled Mega Deal Secrets: How to Find and Close the Biggest Deals of Your Career. And he is also the Vice President of Commercial at Sama. In our conversation today, we're talking about selling mega deals, deals that can transform the arc of your career. First of all, we dive into what constitutes a mega deal and how mega deals change the game for everyone involved: the individual seller, the seller's company, the buyer, and the customers of your buyers. And then we dig into why Jamal believes that most sellers are stuck in the land of what he calls run rate selling. And I love his description of this. And this is the land where it's believed that if you just increase your activity, sales will follow. Or that you need to work 15 opportunities at the same time to hit your numbers. Or that if you just paint by the numbers and stay within the lines, then you will have success in B2B sales. As I said, Jamal talks about why that's not the case, and you'll know how I feel about that. So Jamal and I get into all of this and much, much more, but before we get to Jamal, I want to remind you to subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it, and if you subscribe, we'd certainly appreciate it if you could leave us a review and give us your feedback about how we're doing. So thank you. All right, let's jump into it. Jamal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
It's a pleasure to have you. So let's see. I'm not sure we've had anybody on the show. We've had people who are based in Sweden on the show before, but I don't think we had anybody from, pronounce the name of the town again?
Lund.
And here we are, 10th of January. So how much sunshine do you get each day?
A thimbleful. I think we get sun every other week.
Every other week.
We got some today. It was a good day.
Sunrise is at what time at this time of year?
8:30.
8:30. Okay. Yeah. I spent travel to Sweden a lot for business, and I remember going once in December right before Christmas holidays, and it was like, it seemed like from like 9 to 3, we were sort of, if the sun was out, that was when you saw the light.
That's right.
I just remember everybody telling me that lived there, the customer I was dealing with, that was it February is the big vacation month. It basically reaches their limit in February, and then
you got to get out,
get sun.
you gotta escape. And Swedes tend to go quite far. The location of preference is typically Thailand.
Oh, really? I was thinking like Spain or something.
Well, there is that too, but there's not enough. There's not enough sun and heat in winter in Spain. Oh. So it's either Thailand or it's the Canary Islands.
Wow. Okay. And where are you going?
We just went to Turkey in November.
Okay.
So we're thinking about the Canary Islands.
Canary Islands. Okay. Very cool. So how'd you end up in Sweden?
It was for love.
Oh, there we go. Good motivation.
I met my Sweden-based wife when she traveled to the U.S. to visit family.
Oh, really?
We dated intergalactically, so to speak. And then,
right.
Because she's a European-trained doctor, she discovered how much rework she'd have to do to move to the States and practice, so I moved here for her.
Ah, very nice. Very nice. Yeah, I got married 11 years ago and moved from San Diego to New York because my wife actually teaches medical school in New York. So yeah, she was based there and didn't have the flexibility. Things you do for love, right?
The things you do for love.
Things you do for love. I think there's a song about that. So tell us a little bit about the work that you do and the company you work for.
Sure. I'm a sales VP at a company called Sama Technologies, and we basically bring AI and ML, or broadly speaking, intelligence, into the clinical environment of large pharmaceutical companies.
So the clinical testing that they do.
Yeah, when you find a promising drug, before you get permission from the FDA or other related agencies around the world, you got to test that drug on human beings, and that process is a very complex process. And there's all kind of software that helps bring efficiencies, and reduce manual work within those processes, and that's what we do. Our stuff sits on top of other software to actually do the work with digital workers instead of real people.
Yeah, I'd say a friend who was in the biotech business, worked with small pharma companies doing drug discovery and so on. I think he estimated that cost of getting through all the way through stage 3 clinical trials these days is, I want to say, $300-400 million.
That's right. And that is our, that red circle with the red line through it around the word software that Salesforce uses, right? Yeah. No software.
Yeah.
That's basically our own symbol. No 300 million per trial. We're trying to reduce that cost because it's gotten way out of hand.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's like, okay, makes it think like, where's the innovation come from? Here we are, veering off topic a little bit, but where innovation comes from small companies, if they come up with a discovery, is basically have no choice but either to license it to a big company or sell themselves.
Yeah. Or if they try to do it themselves, there's so much work to be done that small biofarms don't have those people. So they contract with these outsourcers. They're called CROs, clinical research organizations.
Right.
And that's where all the money goes. And that's why it's so expensive, because they're using people.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, if you're a small company, let's say you've gone through a couple rounds, but now you got to the point where, you're going to go into clinical trials. You're having to raise over $250 million just to go through that.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's just for one drug.
That's just for one drug, right? Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about sales. So you've written a book titled Mega Deal Secrets: How to Find and Close the Biggest Deal of Your Career. So first question is, what's the deal with Sweden and mega deals? Because the other book I know called Mega Deals was written. Do you know Christopher Engman?
I know the organization.
Yeah. So it's both located in Sweden. I was like, okay, interesting.
Quite interesting.
Yeah. So what was the impetus to write your book?
The impetus for writing my book was a series of experiences that I had. I was a pretty average seller for a long time. The first decade of my career, I've been in enterprise sales for 21 years now. Mm-hmm. And in that first decade, I had some success. I had some failure. I was fired twice in a row for underperformance.
What type of company? What type of products?
One was a knowledge base product that was ultimately bought by Salesforce. Mm-hmm. And it was a knowledge base for call centers. And another one was a security, basically an anti-phishing product.
Yeah, we've all been fired. What was it you? Was it the product, the company, a mix? What do you think?
Well, I'm the seller. I'll never say it was me. Mm-hmm. Must be something else, right? The product, right. The organization, something.
Right.
I mean, I'm a guy who takes responsibility. I did not have what it took at the time to sell those products to that audience. Mm-hmm.
So what changed?
Well, what changed? The first thing that happened is after I lost these jobs twice in a row, I went to a recruiter, and he was reading my resume, and it was clear that I had bounced around a lot. And he said, I said, what do you mean, He says, well, it's not like you worked at Oracle for 10 years. And sure enough, the next job that I got was at Oracle.
Intentionally or?
No.
Okay.
Not intentionally. It just
I thought maybe time. Let's go to work at Oracle.
the first place that I could get a job because I had bills to pay. Long story short, after a few years at Oracle, I basically was put on an account that needed to do a renewal of a recurring contract. And the experience that we went through was amazing. I was mentored by my VP of sales and my VP of services. Mm-hmm. Both of them were 20-year, foul-mouthed, very salty veterans of our space, which is pharma tech. And together, mostly them, but I did a little bit more than carry their golf clubs. By the time we were done with that deal, within a 9-month period, we had taken what was an at-risk $10 million run rate contract and blew it up into a $50 million contract.
Right.
And we had done it through kind of throwing out the rule book and doing lots of things that the organization in general, and especially the senior executives, really, really liked. We changed the commercial model. We changed the operational model. We got lots of exceptions for, the big Oracle rule book. Mm-hmm. And we basically crafted a deal that the customer just couldn't refuse, and blowing it up kind of 5x.
So take us through that. So unhappy customer, seemingly unhappy customer, you said they're at risk, turned it around, went 5x on the revenue of your value you could extract from the customer. What was the key to doing that?
In the book, in the beginning of the book, I kind of lay out this one scene that really just set up everything. And we were sitting in a conference room on the customer's premises, and we were kind of going through what we thought the customer was all about, because that's typically what had happened in previous years. We were talking about how we could give them a discount here and a different team over there, and move the onshore guys, move it to an offshore team to save money and stuff. And the VP in the business, who was sitting across the table from us, he just put his hands up and he says, guys, this is not about getting a discount or moving a team around or any of that. This is about how we steward the most important data, the critical IP of our company. And then there was a long pause, and we all just kind of thought about that. And then that just completely changed the conversation. Mm-hmm. And one, it elevated the importance of what we were doing in our eyes, the perception of our engagement. And it also opened the door to being much more creative in how to solve it.
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying, arguably, that with the initial sale, that whoever had been responsible for it hadn't identified what was most important to this customer.
There clearly is that opportunity. There were some other factors at play. The product that they were using was part of an acquisition that we had made the previous 12 months. Mm-hmm. And as is so typical with acquisitions, lots of people from the acquired company tend to leave.
Yep.
There was a big turnover in the team. And between those changes and some problems with the software and some problems with how we contract, it created a crisis. And it was during this crisis that we had to renegotiate the entire 3-year contract.
Nothing like what's the expression? Never waste a good crisis.
Never waste a good crisis. Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's something to that, Andy. What I learned is, we talk about pain in sales all the time. Talk about, find the pain. It's all about the pain.
Yeah, I don't, but go ahead.
What I learned about pain is it's a massive ball of energy. Mm-hmm. And that energy can be used for good. And really what it's all about, if a customer or a person has pain, they're really trying to get out of that pain as quickly as possible. So they're extremely motivated. And they were motivated to take a journey with us to get to the other side and to try some completely new things, to basically put a new playbook in place about how we work together. So now I don't really shy away from negative events within customer relationships. I actually see them as a great opportunity. If you do the right thing, and if you get in the foxhole with the customer, the relationship could actually be better when it concludes than before the whole crisis began.
Yeah, as long as the crisis isn't intentionally created in order to create an outcome. I mean, early in my career, working for a company at the time called Burroughs, now Unisys, their CEO and chairman was famous for saying that as a rule, what you try to do is keep your customers surly but not rebellious. And that was the culture, right? If we just sort of keep everybody a little pissed off, it creates this opportunity to upsell them. And I know that's not what you're referring to, but it's, I don't want people to think that's what you're trying to do, is to make people deliberately unhappy in order to come in and run to the rescue. You're in a situation where you had a exodus of talent and people and so on, and you're stuck in this bad situation. Doesn't mean you run away from it. It means you can fix it. But just not make it part of your culture.
Absolutely. I haven't heard that one yet. So.
Oh yeah. The net result wasn't good. I mean, ultimately, customers were taking full page ads out on the Wall Street Journal trying to create class action suits against the company I worked for. Not because of my accounts, but nationwide, because they leaned to this mentality of saying, let's just keep everybody a little bit unhappy. Anyway, back on target. So what is a mega deal? So how'd you come around this idea of what the mega deal is?
Well, the term mega deal was used widely within Oracle for years. I mean, I started at Oracle back in 2007. And at the time, a mega deal, they kind of call it, it was a deal that was above the fold. It was like $10 million or above. Mm-hmm. And it needed special approvals to get paid out. And, it needed a second or third or fourth or fifth set of eyes on it to get different kinds of approvals, to get discounts and other, exceptional T's and C's, et cetera. So I just kind of grew up in the Oracle culture with this concept of mega deals. And at Oracle, it did have this definition of $10 million or above.
Right.
But that's not how I see it today. How I see it today as a mega deal is basically a deal of uncommonly large size, given whatever context you're selling in. Mm-hmm. I mean, I work with some really ambitious sellers, and for them, they're trying to go from selling 100K deals to $1 million deals. Right. $1 million deal is a mega deal to a seller doing 100K.
Yeah. I mean, reading your book, it's like, okay, I mean, this is, and I share this is, it's a mindset. Yeah. It's not about the absolute size of the deal. It's everything's relative, as you talked about just now. But it is a step up for what you're doing currently.
And the first time you do one, it is a journey into the unknown.
Absolutely.
And it can be scary. It can be anxiety provoking.
Yep.
It can be very exposing. Because you're attempting to do something you've never done. You've been a fisherman with a fishing pole, standing on the pier, going for fish a foot long for years. And all of a sudden, you find yourself in a kayak surrounded with some other tribe members going after a whale. Mm-hmm. It's a completely new experience the first time.
And the fear can oftentimes be amplified because you've got a lot riding on it because you've spent so much time on it. At least in my experience with working with teams and my own experience is that it gets pretty binary whether you're going to hit your number or not based on that deal coming in.
And then the pressure can be added even further with lots of eyes on it. Very senior eyes.
Yeah, because it's important to the company as well.
Yeah, and there's a lot of proctology going on. There's a lot of second guessing. There's calls on the weekend. There's extra stuff you got to do to report, and just inform people on what's going on.
I'm laughing because, I had lots of those Sunday calls from bosses over the years. Yeah. So you sort of say mega deals change the game, produce value on 4 levels. So what are those 4 levels?
I mean, there's clearly there's the customer, and that's front and center. That's got to be first. Mm-hmm. Whatever we can do for the customer. Then there's value for the seller, because this can be a life-changing event, just not just financially and commissions, but it can change your mindset permanently if you lean into it and stick with it.
Yep. Confidence. Yes.
Confidence, visibility. It's like climbing a big mountain and actually seeing to the other side for the first time. You lived in this valley forever, then you finally find a way to climb that mountain, and then you can see the vista on the other side for the first time and see, oh my gosh, there's more world over there.
Right.
Then there's the possibility of changing the game for the company you work for. When you get a mega deal or a few mega deals in the door, you're kind of launching or relaunching in some cases these big corporate relationships. Through a mega deal, you can establish, some companies call them key accounts, lighthouse accounts, or what have you.
Anchor accounts, yeah.
And then you can establish all this great relationship building stuff, governance, cadences at various levels, special programs where you get their input on the next version of your software or a new offering, etc. And then the last level is maybe the most important level, because we're talking about enterprise sales here, right? This is this big B2B sales. Mm-hmm. Not only can it help the company that you're selling to, your customer, but it can wind up helping thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of their customers,
right?
Everyday people. And that's, I was really fortunate. I'm still fortunate to be in a space where that kind of association is pretty clear. So after we did this first really big deal, it was with a pharmaceutical company, helping in their clinical space, their clinical process. And about within the next year, I saw the impact of the deal that we did. It helped this company speed the development and the approval process for life-saving drugs that went to tens of millions of people globally. Mm-hmm. And seeing that kind of direct link from something that I played a part in, because it's certainly not me that got this deal done. It was a huge team.
Right.
It felt pretty good.
Yeah, well, they do. But as you said, though, even though you're part of the team, is it can become transformational for the individual who's sort of leading the charge on it. Yeah.
And sometimes it can, and sometimes it can't. And what I mean by that is it can instantly change. It did instantly change my self-perception and the way I look at sales. I'm like, holy cow, I never knew that something like this was really possible. Mm-hmm. But there's lots of sellers out there that, they're one-time wonders, one-song wonders, so to speak. And either they got lucky or they didn't learn it well enough to repeat it or whatever, but they have this fantastic event that happens one time in their career and they're never able to reproduce it.
Right.
And that's what I mean by, sometimes it can be for me, a transformation is a lasting or like a permanent change for the better. And if you can't catch on to that, then it's not so much a transformation. I don't know what you'd call it, just an event.
Yeah. Well, I thought interesting in your book, you say that by bringing this focus to your selling, that sellers can overcome sort of these negative stereotypes that sellers have long been associated with sort of thinking about that. It's as we sort of touched on before, it's because not everybody's going to sell big deals, right? Or mega deals. But it is a mindset that sellers should have, regardless of the size of the deal they're currently working on.
Completely. And the mindset is relevant at the beginning, before the beginning, all the way through. This concept, I think of it as selling above the clouds. The way that I think about it is the first decade of my career, if I look back on it now that I've learned how to do this other thing, this mega deal, transformational selling process, I look back at that first 10 years and I said, that was a very different mentality. Now I call that run rate sales. Lots of smiling and dialing, lots of pounding the phones, lots of cold email, and kind of this 3-step process, prospect like crazy to try to get a discovery call that would lead to a demo. And at the end of the demo, all I could really do was pray that they would take my next call.
Right.
And this was a cycle that I went through a year in it. No wonder I got fired twice in a row, because that's kind of the way that I saw selling.
Well, but that's sort of the mindset that most sellers are socialized to have. I mean, you spell it out in the book. You talk about, run rate sellers, work is done reactively rather than purposely, predicated on the belief that if you just increase your activity, sales will follow, that you need to have too many opportunities in the mill at the same time. Like the one you say, if you just paint by the numbers and stay within the lines, you have success, which, to me sort of typifies the way so much of selling is managed these days.
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I learned in the first deal that I did, I told you I was mentored by these two industry veterans. One of them in the book is a they're all anonymized. All the characters in the book, they're all real people. They're just anonymized.
Right. Composites,
yes, exactly. And my VP of sales, I think he's probably a genius. Comes from a Eastern European background, intellectual parents, and he would be on his motorcycle. That's usually when I would give him updates. He'd be on his motorcycle between his place in Paris and Nice. And he'd actually have like a microphone and a head earbuds for his phone. And we'd be talking about the deal in one of these many spreadsheets. And he'd actually be able to call out exact numbers in specific cells. He was that kind of smart.
Yeah. It's almost like you need to work for somebody that smart at some point in your career. I had a similar experience with at a certain point in my career, after I'd been about 8 years working for somebody that was just so much smarter than anybody else I'd worked with or for before, that was so challenging, right? Because I imagine this gentleman you're talking about, same thing, just so smart. You felt like you were running to catch up to them. And it taught me so much, because I never want to be in that position where I'm trying to catch up with my manager's understanding of the account. Yeah,
no, there was that. What he taught me was the value of I don't know if playing is the right word, is executing a sales strategy the same way you play chess. At least a couple of moves ahead. You can't think 10 moves ahead. There's too many variations.
Right.
But you got to think at least 2, if not 3, maybe 4 steps ahead. What is going to happen logically? If you do this, what are they logically going to do? And then what would you do? And then what would, a couple of iterations with that. And he taught me how to sell with my brain instead of just through kind of rote activity.
Or through emotion, right? I mean, yeah. Well, I mean, I think that this thing what you're talking about is thinking ahead is I agree, because that's why I felt like I was always sort of running to catch up with this manager in particular, is you're talking about a level of intentionality in how you sell, as opposed to, just following the paint by numbers or, just being robotic about it. Is, to me, that's a huge differentiator from people I know that personally have had consistent success over the course of their careers, is, just using the heads, thinking, being intentional about what they're doing, thinking ahead. I mean, in my first book, I called it out. I said, selling is a thinking person's business.
In the thinking process, something that I've had to learn how to do was not only think for myself, but endeavor to think like people I needed to interact with.
Mm-hmm.
And to start to reach the higher levels. I mean, I one thing that I fully learned is that you'll never do a really large deal without senior buy-in and probably a champion. I've never sold a big deal unless I had a really senior champion, because they're just too complex and they're just too much work and they're too much of a pain in the rear for anybody except somebody who's got a lot of volition and a lot of motivation to get something done on the customer side.
Right. Yeah, I think the sort of flip side of that is the danger that I see, and oftentimes sales training is for deals that don't deserve or require that sort of senior level attention, is to force sellers to try to get it. If you're taking the time and attention of a senior person on something that's doesn't require it, I've seen that end badly more often than not.
And just the entry point for that seems to be, various flavors of, will you have a coffee with me? What are your MBOs? The concept that discovery is working from a completely blank slate.
Right.
Which in my view just doesn't work with senior folks. That's the last thing they want to do is tell you their problems. They want you to tell them, not only do you know their problems, but you already have some really good points of view on how to fix them in some way that they haven't heard before, because they've already got Accenture and PwC and McKinsey and everybody else telling them the top 4 trends in the industry and then the next 4 that are going to come after that and the roadmap of projects that they should do to reach a certain amount of efficiency, et cetera, et cetera. So in my experience, you've either got to get ahead of that or you've got to tweak some level of curiosity, of intrigue.
Mm-hmm.
You could be telling something of the same story that these other guys are talking about, but there's got to be something new or something that's very much a needle in the haystack where you're telling them something that they don't know about their own organization, not just about the industry, not just about trends and all that stuff. But if you can come and say, hey, I found this needle in the haystack on your shop floor. And what it means is this, and what it implies is that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much more meaningful than you've realized so far. And not only have I found it, but I think I know how to fix it or find the other ones or, whatever the problem is. Now you got them like, holy cow, now I'm hearing something new. Now I'm hearing something different. And it could be really relevant. So let's let this guy talk a little longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's multiple ways to have that conversation, but absolutely right. You got to bring something different to the table. And the otherwise, two points you make in the book when you talk about your traits of mega dealer sellers is you're that run rate seller. If you don't have that, you're just hoping to get in, do the land and expand, as opposed to truly sell something transformative.
The land and expand, I think, can be a useful tool. But similarly, I think that it has become the biggest crutch in our industry.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And it is a way to stay mediocre. With such a ubiquitous use of it, it is a surefire way. If that's your go-to strategy, it's a surefire way into eternal mediocrity.
Right.
And staying in the purgatory of run rate sales.
Yeah, it is a guarantee of mediocrity. I mean, it's I'm having a conversation with CEOs, stressing about his inability to develop a big deal strategy. And some of it is just as simple as, well, go out and sell big deals. Don't have your team completely oriented towards, let's get the smallest deal possible, and then let's see if we can grow it from there.
Another thing that I've noticed about doing big deals is that they become relevant at a certain point in a company's maturation. So since I've started talking about mega deals, and especially since the book, I get lots of reps from really young companies. Most of them are from, at least kind of middle stage startups or scale ups. Some of them are from really early startups. And I'm starting to see that it's really hard to execute mega deals if you're just too small or too young of a company. You can start to grow your average deal size, but especially if you're going to do it more than once, if you kind of want to grow a capability of managing, closing, and servicing and delivering really large deals, you need a bunch of pieces. And I don't really address that as a topic within the book, but a lot of the characters are in these different areas. There's the sales team, which is not just what typical sellers do, which is you got a salesperson and you have a pre-sales person, and you kind of ride off into the desert like Batman and Robin. That'll get you a $100K deal, maybe a $500K deal. But if you really want to blow it out, if you really want to solve some big problems, you're not Batman and Robin. You need to be more like a Roman legion. You need to be like the field marshal of this Roman legion with lots of players, lots of work streams going on at the same time. You need a battle plan and a way to manage it all. So how you manage things is completely different.
It is. But the same token is, I would say, because my expertise coming up was, working for no name, no track record companies and selling really big deals against big competition. And I'm a firm believer that if you think your ultimate goal is to sell big deals, then start off by selling big deals. Scale-wise, they may be a little smaller than you ultimately grow into.
Yeah.
But there's lots of ways to do it. Perhaps, we've had multiple deals where the buyer forced us to bring on a prime contractor. I mean, we were the entire system, but they're willing to pay an extra 20% to bring in a large integrator to act as sort of the buffer, because the revenue was bigger than our annual revenues at that point that we're getting from that one deal. Wow. But you can do that. I wouldn't discourage people from saying there's a certain stage in our development where we can do big deals. The size of the deal will change.
Yeah.
But you can be a small company and go out and get a mega deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you make that a habit, that's the hockey stick in revenue that everybody's trying to get to.
Right.
Yes, you need the small deals. You need the medium deals. That's kind of, there's a place for run rate, right? You need to be closing stuff as a company all the time.
Yep.
But man, if you can look at all of the deals worked by the company as like an investment portfolio, you got so much in in bonds and so much in growth stock, and then maybe a few percent in the alternative asset classes. You can make a conscious decision as a company to say, okay, we want at least 20% of our reps' time for going for the really big ones.
Yeah. Well, the fact is, my experience, personal experience with the companies that we've grown, is that you get the big deals. It teaches you how to do better at run rate selling. You learn how to support customers better. You learn how to execute. I mean, one big deal I had is we were so, again, relatively small. There's a huge multi-billion-dollar multinational. They insisted they put somebody on site as we started to execute the contract. Fine. We were fine with that. I mean, but that person helped us get better at what we were doing, made us understand what we could do better as we grew. I think it's too many companies are sort of put off by this idea that, there's a certain size, certain stage for doing big deals. It's like, if you're aspiring to do big deals, learn how to do big deals. That's a core capability of the company.
Which, in the way that I think, that very quickly moves to the relationship between the on-the-ground seller and the management team. Mm-hmm. Because not only to be nimble, but to be agile, to be able to deploy resources and say, we're going to put our first person on the ground for this customer. Mm-hmm. We're going to build a new capability. You need the top management team to be able to make those decisions. In those cases, doing these big deals isn't that far from the same decisions you'd make in M&A.
Oh yeah. No, it's everybody's involved. It's not just the salesperson. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Huge visibility. And to your point, I mean, I remember one company, we made the decision. I made the decision. We're going to put somebody in in London because we had just closed a really big deal with the customer there, and they really wanted somebody there.
Yeah.
Well, it was a big decision for a small company to afford putting somebody in place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, not to beat on this, but it's just, to me, is just this mindset, and you talk about this, having this mindset in the book is, yeah, you can apply the mindset to smaller deals. It doesn't necessarily mean everything needs to be a 7-figure deal, but yeah, have that mindset. Instead of just saying, yeah, we're going to, peck away at this and eventually we'll increase our deal size, 10% more this year, 10% more the next year, and so on. Yeah, if you want to make that big step function, go find big deals.
And not only does the seller need to learn this new mindset, but they need to be able to either inspire it in others or find kind of these kindred spirits on the other side, which is the customer side, right? I've learned that there's a big difference between responsibility and accountability.
Yes.
For those who think those words are really, really close, I learned that responsibility, can be the person who's actually responsible to push the buttons, and they got to make sure that they do the work and it's done well.
Right.
But the accountable is not necessarily, and in most cases, especially in corporate structures, it's not the person who pushes the buttons. Mm-hmm. It's somebody who owns the outcome.
Right.
And it's those folks who so many sellers are either fearful of approaching because they feel, there's too much distance between me and her. She's an SVP and I'm a lowly salesperson. And how could I engage her directly? Right? There's a lot of, I see a lot of reps that don't want to go all the way to where they need to go right away. Right? They kind of climb up the mountain level by level, takes them months or years. But to be able to kind of reach out and to have those kind of conversations about problems or opportunities, it doesn't have to be pain. It can be, trying to reach the next level, trying to get to a better place. But to be able to have those conversations directly, or at least be a part of the conversation and match people who you have, experts or executives on your side, with the right folks on the other side too. That's part of this whole idea of selling above the clouds, right? In the run rate world, you're really spending time with folks on the shop floor or first line managers, and you just get stuck there just in the quagmire of kind of the run rate mentality. But to leapfrog above and to get to those higher levels, things are completely different. I remember that it was a meeting like that one that I was talking about the VP. I was amazed at how simply and clearly my executives and this customer executives were talking to each other. Mm-hmm. They use plain English. They don't use big words. Mm-hmm. They get right to it, and they don't hide information. They just say, okay, here's my problem. Here's how we're doing it. Here's how much money it takes us to do it today. Can you do better? Well, yeah, we can do better. We do this part well. We do this part not so well. But the way that we get over it is this. I was just like, holy cow, they're just talking like they were at a church picnic. And it's, and it was cutting through what would have taken months to deal with the lower level folks because of all the games that people play and the inability to just get right to it. Yeah,
well, I think that speaks to sort of a larger issue, which we could spend another hour on, but it's just, there's a salespeople have this perception of the status mismatch between them and the person they're speaking with. And to the point you just made is they don't understand this. The best way to deal with someone is deal with them as you would a peer, even if there is a status mismatch, and talk in plain English and be clear about understanding them and make sure they're clear about understanding you.
And one place that a lot of reps can gain comfort from is that you can gain that peer status by just knowing your corner of the world.
Yeah.
Because the person who you're talking to is generally working at a really high level, and they're never in deep details. That's not what they do. So you could be an expert in one tiny corner of the world. You don't have to be on their level in every way.
Absolutely. I mean, that is sort of the critical thing, right? I mean, you talk in your book about C-level insights, I think you call them. Yeah. Everybody can have an insight. As a corporation, you want to develop these insights. But, for me, and I know you come at it from a different way. In the book, you talk about, rockstar sellers don't lead with questions. But I actually find that, one of the most effective ways to deliver insights is through questions. But you have to be prepared with them.
Absolutely. And I think questions are very important. And, sometimes to make a point, you got to go to one of the extremes to make the point. Mm-hmm. What I really mean by rock stars don't lead with questions, meaning they don't always lead with stupid questions to really high up people.
That's for sure.
They ask lots of questions. Most of it they've asked, a good bit of it they've asked already in preparation in getting in front of that senior person. And then when they do get in front of that senior person, they ask smart questions.
Right. But to your point earlier is you talked about if you want to bring an insight that tells the buyer something about their business, senior person, something about their business they hadn't thought of or aren't aware of.
Yeah.
I believe phrasing that as a question, where you're asking them something about their business that they possibly should know, but very possibly don't, or probably don't, hugely powerful way to introduce an insight.
Yeah.
Because you're not stating it in such a way that might make them feel bad about the fact they don't know it. It's like, oh, yeah, well, that's a really interesting question. I need to think about that. And then they'll want to know, well, why would this be important? Those types of questions become triggers for conversations at a very substantive level.
Yet another example of selling is a thinking person's activity.
It most certainly is. And this thing just drives me nuts is, I think trend in sales over the last 10, 15 years has been to try to, again, make it more process driven and less about the individual and more about the process. And I think that's ultimately self-defeating.
It's a whole nother topic, but, with the rise of sales tech, absolutely, I think there's a place for it. My sense is that the process-driven view and the tech-driven view all has their place, but it's particularly relevant at the lower levels, either smaller deals,
transactional,
just transactional selling. I think there's a lot of room for lots of adherence to process, lots of sales tech opportunities. The higher up, the bigger numbers, the more complex problems, they tend to lose efficacy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it relies on the ability of the seller to, as I like to say, be more human. And that's what I talk about in my new book, which we'll talk about at some other time. So, all right, Jamal, thank you so much for joining me. If people want to contact you, what's the best way to do that?
I think the best way would probably just look me up on LinkedIn. I can give you my profile link if you want that for the show notes.
We'll put that in the show notes. Yeah.
And from there, in the featured section, there's lots of stuff that I have or do. Everything from my email list to my book to a free webinar about, what it takes to be a mega dealer.
Cool. Very cool. All right. Well, Jamal, been a pleasure.
Mine as well. I really appreciate the time, Andy.
All right. Do it again soon. Okay, friends, that's it for this episode. First of all, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I am so grateful for your support of this show. And I want to thank my guest, Jamal Reimer, for sharing his insights with us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to this podcast, Sales Enablement with Andy Paul, on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Certainly appreciate your help with that. And thank you so much for investing your time with me today. Until next time, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.